Greetings from Toronto. I'm Douglas Worts, and I think Mike Tooby has given you a bit of an introduction to me. But essentially, I have been working in the museum field for over 30 years, and over that time done lots of interesting things in the area of museum education and interpretation and audience research. But for the last 15 years, my work has really been focused on this area of sustainability and what is the relationship between culture and sustainability or unsustainability. And for quite a while I've thought now that museums have a tremendous opportunity to be part of a transformative process in society to help make that shift from being unsustainable towards greater sustainability. And I think that has great sort of resonance with the kinds of issues that you're talking about through your conference about the relationship of the local to the global or the international. And so I wanted to just share some of my thoughts about what I think the opportunities are for museums as they, particularly art museums, as they go forward into the future and attempting to become as relevant as they can, and particularly joining forces with the artists of our societies that are often doing very interesting reflections on the issues of our day. That certainly includes sustainability. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a number of things and that I think museums can do. And one of them is to clarify what everybody thinks is the to what end of museums. For a long time, I think museums have been going down the road of doing what they've always done, particularly activities that surround collection building and exhibits and related programming. But it has not been clear really what is the to what end of this activity, and this involves the tearing apart, I guess, of the question of are these activities that museums do means to something, or are they the ends in themselves? And for me, I've come to believe that both collection building and exhibitions are strategies, and they're not the only strategies. And there's a possibility of reshaping the priorities and the activities that museums embark on as they do what they do. So part of this process means coming up with some clear measures of success that if museums are going to move forward, they have to be clear about what it is that they're trying to have an impact on in terms of culture, in terms of community, individuals, and ultimately the global situation. And that means that if they are able to become clear about what the impacts beyond themselves are, then they can measure their impacts better, and they can also start to rethink just what strategies they're using and how effective they are, and reestablish some priorities in their activities. This means developing performance indicators, and this is not easy to do because, as we all know, a lot of what museums do is to create the context for qualitative experiences, and those are not easy to measure. But I do think it's the time where there's really not much option. If museums want to be relevant and engaged in the cultural issues of our time, we have to be able to measure these the impacts of what it is that we do, and we have to be willing to change what it is that we do to better achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves. And we have to make sure that there is some sort of alignment between what we think our goal is and what the public thinks the goal is. part of doing this, I think, is asking the bigger questions about, well, what do we really mean by culture, and is culture a set of niche activities that are represented by different disciplines and different kinds of organizations that do different things? Or is culture really the sum total of how we live our lives? And this includes how we relate to the past, how we learn from the past, how we take stock of the changing world around us, and how do we plan for the future. Not so much what we do in our leisure time, which is where culture has been increasingly focused in our world, but rather how do we position our cultural infrastructures to really be engaged in the living cultural realities of today. So I personally think that we have to find ways that museums see themselves more as places of the muse, and that as a process, as a psychological process within the public, this is possible to achieve not only within museums, the physical places of museums, but also in every walk of life. And that will take some serious reflecting to think about how to transform or to morph the museum from what has traditionally been a discipline-based, expert, authoritative center into a set of instruments that are able to facilitate a more reflective, integrated, socially dynamic mechanism for steering society and the way society operates towards a more sustainable goal. This includes recognizing that a lot of what museums have been doing in the past has been outputs based. We want to produce an exhibit, or we want to produce a permanent collection installation, or produce a book. And I think that if we stretch ourselves to think that we need to know what is the impact, what are the outcomes, the desired outcomes in society, we can really start to change how our outputs are relating to the outcomes, the social, cultural, real world outcomes that people live with day to day. And along the way, I think it's possible to imagine museums leading the charge in some ways of stimulating a public discussion around what is the vision of a sustainable culture, a culture of sustainability, a culture that acknowledges that it lives in a local environment, but that it's intimately tied to the global realities, particularly through our economic system, our social system, the movement of people, movement of goods. We rely on the world for virtually every part of our life, and yet our level of unconsciousness around the impacts of our lives on other parts of the world is one of the great challenges that I think humanity needs to grapple with, but particularly the West, the industrialized part of the world. And this whole business of exploring the to what end of museums is buttressed, I think, by asking ourselves, well, what are the skills that museums need to have in order to do this kind of work? Acknowledging that there is great value in the existing skill sets that are here, and yet the power hierarchies that exist in museums maybe have to change fairly dramatically, and that all of us are in that same situation, whether we're in museums or whether we're in business or government. The world is changing in such a way that that traditional job definitions, traditional skill sets are just not going to be enough to bridge the gap between the local and the international. And so, to what extent can museums build into their practice the ability to support staff in acquiring new skills um, and trying to acknowledge that that change is going to be stressful and difficult, but that when we all pull together on this, a great deal can be accomplished. The third thing I would say about this change in museums is really encouraging and supporting experimentation. Museums have to, I think, be willing to stretch out into really new territory in order to test their abilities to engage the public in new ways. And if they do that, then all kinds of things are possible. But we have to make sure that we aren't afraid to fail and that we don't use some notion of rather vague standards of quality and expertise that we have to maintain. These are mechanisms that more often than not keep us really where we are and prevent change from taking place on a significant basis. One of the things that will help propel, I think, museums towards a new future, and as well as communities, is by coming up with some sort of a vision of what a culture of sustainability in a pluralized, globalized, economically driven world actually looks like. Because if that can be envisaged, then people can move towards it. Institutions can move towards it. And one has to acknowledge that any kind of vision in this way is never more than temporary, because it will change as the world around us changes. But having that vision is an important thing, and at this point there is very little in the way of either local or global visions of sustainability that are sort of embedded in dynamic cultures. So in order to do this, there need to be the feedback loops that continually provide information back into institutions to let them know what it is that they're causing, that they're stimulating, they're supporting in terms of the public dynamic, public reflection, public thinking. So these are some of my thoughts about what the opportunities and obstacles are for museums, and I hope it's useful, and I look forward to hearing about the discussions that go on. Thanks very much.